Well, I will knowing you as I have, I would suggest that there's one factor that may come into, why you are suited for this or why you are attracted to trying it is just your sort of cantankerous theatrical nature. That you do enjoy an audience. Yeah. You are never one to shrink from speaking your mind. And I'll be honest, when I first met you, I hated that about you. I went home to my wife and said, I'm not sure I can do this job. There's this guy named Paul who drives me absolutely out of my mind.
Because I stole a spotlight from you.
That's right, and I couldn't stand that. But how do you think these, as you say, you are cantankerous, you are a rabble-rouser. And I think some of that is calculated. Why? Why do you take that approach to things? What
aren't you sick of all these namby-pamby pleasant people on television?
I hate pleasant people.
Who are telling you what you want to hear so you'll buy their product or vote for their cause. I want to tell you what I really think. And by the way, if you send me to the legislature, that's exactly what I'm going to do, because I'm too old to waste my time kissing up to anybody. I'm 68 years old. I'm not trying to get, if you sent me, I wouldn't be trying to get reelected. I'd be trying to get to say what I believe. And what I believe is education is being manipulated, and our children are being manipulated by federal bureaucrats. It's almost immoral to test kids. There's a wonderful story of the Chinese farmer who was so eager to have his rice grow that he went out every day and he pulled up each of the rice plants and measured the roots to see how much it had grown the day before, and then he replanted it. That's what we're doing to our children with standardized testing. It's unethical. It needs to be stopped. There's way too much of it. And the reason there's way too much of it is we've all bought these gadgets and filled the school with these wonderful computers, so now we have to justify it to the public. Oh, well, we'll use the computers to test our children to death. We'll make them so self-conscious that they won't. The joy of childhood will be crushed. It'll become a long trudge to success. I'm sorry. I want my children to be happy, not to be, achievers.
You mentioned your children. That's kind of a figurative sort of label, because you actually are a lifelong bachelor and don't have children of your own, never been married. What does that sort of status, how does that, I think that has to play into who you are, and does it play in any way into something that you would, again, bring to the legislature?
Well, first of all, I have 3,000 children. Every kid that was ever in my class, even if they made my life miserable.
That sounds like quite a, that may be a scandal, right?
I can say, well, Solomon had 300 wives and 800 concubines.
Okay, Paul, by the way, is not claiming that those 3,000 children are biologically his. I just want to get that on the record right now.
And I have a foster son who was just here visiting me, a U.S. Marine Sergeant. He and his wife were just here visiting me. We have another
photo.
Yeah, it's not a photo, it's a newspaper article. If you could drop it in, of 40 years ago when I was young and handsome, and it's a picture of me in the Washington Post next to actress Gloria Swanson, who is no longer young and handsome, and Vivian Kellums, a Connecticut businesswoman, and we were all testifying before the House Ways and Means Committee in Washington, Wilbur Mills Ways and Means Committee, about the unfairness of married couples getting a tax deduction and single people not getting a tax deduction, so that they had to pay more than married couples. this business of being single has been on my radar for 40 years. Here's the proof of it. I don't know if the picture's up. But the other thing is, being single, I had to figure out quickly that if anything was going to get done in my house, I had to do it. It wasn't going to be shared with anybody else. If it was going to get done, it had to be done by me. And I better have backups for everything. 2 cars, 2 microwaves, 2 lawnmowers, because if something went, there wasn't somebody else to help put it back together. Anyway, I think that's been my apprenticeship for being independent. Living alone my entire life, and I have lived alone since I was 19 years old, has made me independent. I thought at one point, you know, and I used to joke about this, well, I have no skills at compromising because I've never had to compromise with anybody on a daily basis like a married couple would. But that's not true, because if you have 100 students, you compromise 100 times a day, every day of your life. So I have a lot of skill with compromising. But in terms of getting things done, it was very clear to me very early that if it was going to be done, I had to do it. That petition for a federal grand jury at Kent State, 10,800 signatures, nobody else suggested that. That was my idea.
So I think one of your sort of hallmarks is your bombastic approach to things. I mean, you enjoy being theatrical, but you do it not just for your enjoyment, but I think that there's sort of an impatience with being politically correct, and you're saying, look, I have something to say, I'm going to say it. Now, some people would say, we don't need someone in the legislature who's going to stand up and yell about things.
I'm not going to yell.
And, well, I think your natural speaking voice is fairly loud, but who's going to stand up and be just inflexible. Can you give me an example of a time when you have taken a stance and you've been very, very firm about it and outspoken about it, as you tend to be, but then having learned more, you changed your mind? Now, I understand you're talking about day-to-day compromise in the classroom, and I understand that, but can you think of a major issue where you've come out fully ready to endorse one opinion and then learn more and said, no, I've got another idea now. I have to change my mind given the facts? Because to me, that's a key proponent or a key element of an intelligent person, that they're able to change their minds if a new set of facts arises.
So you don't think pig-headedness is a virtue?
No, I do not think pig-headedness is a virtue. I've always admired your outspokenness, but I don't find you to be inflexible.
Well, let me tell you, here's a good one that I actually had to confront this morning in a little debate with a friend of mine I've had since high school. Gun control. I have been almost biased against weapons ever since I saw M16s tear apart the body organs of 4 students at Kent State. When the bullets hit Allison Krauss, from the bullets, apparently the way I don't know much about weapons, but from that type of rifle, when they hit their target, they separate. They tore apart every organ in her body. She had no chance of living. She died in the arms of her boyfriend in the parking lot in Kent State. So I have been biased against weapons. I used to give an apartment in my home as a kind of scholarship to Dartmouth students, like free, and just to pay back all the people who had helped me when I was going to college. And one Dartmouth student was captain of the rifle team, and he wanted to bring his rifles onto my property. He said he'd keep them in a locked box. And I said, no, I told them the story I just told you about Kent State, and I said, I'm just philosophically opposed to having weapons on my property. Well, since then, my own high school students have shown me how much pleasure they get out of hunting. One of my students, a girl, has one of those things in the tree. What's it called?
A stand.
A stand in a tree. And she hunts deer. She got a 9-pointer or 8, I don't know how many points. And I have had to rethink, you know, maybe my bias from Kent State is a form of post-traumatic stress syndrome. Maybe I am just blind to the value that guns have for some people. I have had to rethink that. But for years I didn't want to see guns. I certainly didn't want them on my property. I was terrified of what I had seen them do. So that's an issue. It's not that I was a crusader against guns, but it was a very firmly held bias of mine, which I've had to change. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, and this is the wonderful thing about being a high school teacher, as you well know, my own students taught me. They taught me that. I didn't teach them. Any good teacher knows that it's the students who are the teacher. They are always teaching you.
They taught you how to rap as well at one time.
The Moby Dick rap.
Moby Dick rap. I don't know if that's available.
We don't have
anywhere.
that picture.
No. Maybe just as well. So you refer to your students often, and I know that you have put a lot of stock in the lessons that literature have to teach us. So what is the one work of literature that you wish everyone in the Vermont legislature would read or reread, and why?
Well, I wouldn't have them read it because it's too confusing with the flashbacks and the stage directions. I'd have them watch it, the Dustin Hoffman version of Death of a Salesman. And the reason I would have them watch it is the poignancy and the tragedy of selling your soul to the false god of money comes across beautifully in that play. And what Arthur Miller was saying is that our whole country at that time, when he wrote it in 1949, I think, was bowing down to the false god of money. And now, the same thing that happened to Willie Loman, the main character, he works 37 years. I would put 36 years into this company. Howard, he says to his young boss, he said his father had hired him. Howard's father had hired him. You can't eat the orange and throw the peel away. And Howard fires him. After 36 years, no respect, no loyalty, no devotion, nothing. He's just used up. He is. You can't eat the orange and throw the peel away. He is the orange. He has been devoured by the system. I would have all Vermont legislators watch that video. And not the new one, the one with Dustin Hoffman, 1987. And I show it to my kids, but I don't think they're too young to appreciate the sadness of that. They have to get older and experience how unfair life can be and how tempted you are in life to sell your soul to the god of money, especially in our culture, or materialism.